Go.
Oh, sorry. I was confused by my producer. Welcome once again to this week's edition of the Android Developer Office Hours. To my right are Joe Fernandez.
Hello.
And Alex Lucas. Excuse me. Rita Meyer is our producer. Let's get right to work here. We have a question that's currently in the lead: how to make an Android unlocker app safer against crackers. I would love to have more insight on this. Full details and then a link to Stack Overflow.
Right. So we took a look at this one earlier. Yeah, it's safer is the key thing, not completely safe against crackers, of course. One of the things we were looking at,
we've got some audio problems.
We've got some audio problems. Okay.
Wait 1 second.
Bear with us just for a moment.
All right. Well, we will.
I can hear you.
Oh, good. Glad to hear it.
Ah.
We're still working on it. Still working on
But
it.
you're off air.
We're off air?
It says off air on the Google Plus Hangout.
Oh, okay.
Gotcha.
Still working on it. We've moved to a new office today, so...
Can anybody hear us?
So, of course, it's not quite working.
Okay. Yes, we have. Okay.
Test.
We're trying right now. Does anybody hear us?
That's terrible.
Still working on it. Saul, can you hear us?
Hello? Yes, no, maybe.
Yes, no. Anyone hear us?
Interesting.
We need Jeopardy music for times like this.
We can do our own Jeopardy music. Or, you know,
Now I hear you again.
You can hear us again?
You
Oh,
can
okay.
hear us, no one else.
Oh.
Oh, no one else can.
Oh, okay.
That's
That's not so good.
Not good at all. Still a few bugs in the system.
You left Mountain View, or is it just a new office inside Mountain View?
It's another office inside Mountain View.
Yep.
We are now broadcasting from high atop one Android square.
we
I
even have a
was actually
webcam.
once in Mountain View. I visited inside the Google office.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. What did you think?
Pretty cool.
What did you think when you visited our campus?
Well, it was very strange to see this giant Android stuff, standing around.
Yeah, when I came here for an interview, they dropped me off in front of the Android statue garden, and I didn't really realize how monstrous everything was.
Right. Yeah.
With the Android that's twice as tall as I am, it was pretty neat.
Well, in Israel everything is so small, so when you come to the United States, you see everything that is so huge.
Yes.
That's right. We like things bigger,
Right.
if not necessarily better.
So can I fire off a quick question for myself? Or?
Please do.
Sure.
Why not?
I need to implement a Facebook, but I implemented a Facebook button, to draw some information using Facebook SDK, and I used the Facebook SDK in order to make my button, but the problem is that I see the button on my XML editor, but when I run the app on my Galaxy Nexus, I don't see the button. It's there, technically I can press it and it works, but no picture on the background. No, the picture is not showing.
We should be good at this.
So you can see it in the layout editor, but when you put it on the phone, it doesn't show up?
No, it works perfectly, but no picture.
No picture.
And I tried it on a different phone also, and it didn't work.
So when you say it works perfectly, as in you can click the button, you just can't see it.
Exactly. It's an invisible button, which is pretty cool, but it's missing the point.
Not what you're
That's-
going for, right?
That's something
Okay.
I would find challenging to do on purpose.
Right.
That's
Possibly there's some kind of resource mismatch by the time it gets to your phone. Sounds like the layout editor can find it, but not the That's really weird. I don't see how you can. That's kind of.
I'm not really sure how especially since the layout editor can see it.
Right.
And I'll
right.
tell you,
Usually it's
even
not the
something else.
problem.
What I tried instead of background, I tried to use the SLC option of the item, to show it as a picture, not as a
Right.
background.
Uh-huh.
And it showed the button, but the picture was, it cutted all the corners of the picture, so it's not really a solution for it because I need the picture to be in the size of the button.
What object are you using? Is it a button or is it an image
It's
button?
it's
or
a custom button from the Facebook SDK.
a custom button. So is it not a 9 patch or anything? Something else?
No, it's I looked through the code of the SDK since it's open sourced and it seems like a normal button, but something they did there makes it disappear once you run the app.
Maybe, yeah, so maybe there's a weird format to that. Is it a PNG or something like that? Or a
It's a PNG, yeah.
PNG? Maybe they've got some weird encoding in the PNG that doesn't,
Right.
that phone doesn't know how to unencode.
I would say that unless somebody has a really good idea, you should probably post the question to Stack Overflow. See if anybody can answer it either from the Facebook side of things or from Android.
Yeah, one other thing I would try for that is just open up that image in something else like GIMP or Photoshop or something and resave it as another PNG. Maybe the format, maybe if it is a format problem, that might solve it. So maybe give that a
this is like the second bug that I already found in the Facebook SDK.
Okay, well, glad you're giving them a workout over there. Make sure you file bugs with them too.
Yeah.
I'm sure they'll appreciate it.
The first one, which was pretty funny, is that if you use a single sign-in, to ask a person if you allow one sign-in in order to draw the person's information, if he already has the Facebook app installed on his device, it will not work.
Oh,
Huh.
that sounds like
Interesting.
not such a good
Well,
limitation there. All
I
right.
think we should probably move on.
All right, thanks for the question.
Thank
you.
I think our producer has our stuff back on track. Yes, no,
Let's go
maybe?
back to are we still on track here? Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
okay, we're good to go.
Okay.
Let's go back to
Continue
the question we were trying to work on to begin with, which is how to make an Android unlocker app safer against crackers. Gentlemen?
Right. Still.
I'm giving this one to you
Oh, thank you very much.
because it's so easy and straightforward.
So we were discussing this before the show. It's a challenge. Safer against crackers versus being safe against crackers. I don't think you can actually get anything completely safe against somebody who's very determined. One of the things I would recommend doing is instead of having a separate unlocker app, use in-app billing instead. Personally, I think that's a better solution for your app anyway, because that way your users don't have to download a separate APK in order to unlock your app. So that would be my first recommendation: implement in-app billing, and then within that, you can find a lot of documentation about how to make that transaction a little bit more secure. So take a look at in-app billing. Again, I think it'd be a better solution for your users. And there's quite a bit of documentation about how to do more secure implementations of in-app billing. And there's also a library. I think it's Android. It's not one of ours. It's a third-party library. I think it's Android in-app billing library, I believe it is. If you can Google that, you should be able to find that. And that should probably help you get that done a little bit faster. So, moving on.
Thank you. Next question is, what is the best way to give access to a paid app to select people without them paying? I'm thinking something along the lines of gift codes for testers so they don't have to pay, but still get the updates from Google Play.
All right. I'll take a crack. There's a few different solutions you can try. Wouldn't say that any one of them is like the best, like the one way to do this. If you're going with getting updates through Google Play, the best setup would probably be to have the application as free, and then free on Google Play, and then unlock certain features via in-app billing. And then what you could do is, one way you could do it would be to sort of bypass in-app billing if they enter a coupon code in some place, or have some sort of Easter egg thing where if they, Konami code and like touch the corners of the screen in various way, it unlocks or something like that. And then for everyone else who doesn't have the unlock mechanism, they could purchase through in-app billing. Any other ideas?
Yeah, I think some mechanism through in-app billing, you might have a free feature that you only allow for certain people to purchase. Yeah, we're kind of getting out on the edge of our own personal knowledge space, though. But
Right.
I think in-app billing and some variation on that is probably your best bet.
Right. If you don't care about the updates happening through Google Play, then you could just distribute the app independently. But if you want to go through Google Play, the best option is definitely, is at least probably free app with in-app billing.
Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen. Next question. In Ice Cream Sandwich, is there any way to control the camera and flash from within a service like you could in Gingerbread? ICS seems to require a Surface preview.
Right, so theoretically it should be possible to do this. I know that in ICS we changed around a bunch of the APIs actually to make them a little bit more flexible in ICS, so it's possible that that's changed. What I would recommend here is actually post a Stack Overflow bug for us and let us know what the problem is and where you're running into an issue. It's completely possible that we may have introduced a bug with the ICS release. So just in our comments, where do we want our in-app things? Post it in moderator. Add a comment to your own comment here and give us a link to the Stack Overflow bug. But it sounds like it should be possible, but we need to take a look at the code and see what's going on there. Next.
Next question. Have you ever thought of including an ORM with the SDK? Are there any that you would recommend?
No and no. The thing with mobile programming is that we try to keep things pretty lightweight, and the ORMs add a layer that doesn't really, at least none of the ones that I've seen from personal experience, really justify their existence and the complexity they add and the efficiency issues and stuff. An alternative to an ORM would be there's an open source project. I want to say, what did I say? Was it MDSD or something like that?
MD, yeah.
Android MDSD content provider. Basically a thing that you sort of give it your data model, and it will generate the SQL commands to generate the tables and generate a content provider for you, and then you can go in and sort of hand tune those. But that should really, in most cases, be all you need. Like I'm guessing, sort of from the context of the question, that what it really is I don't want to write my own content provider from scratch, and everyone at this side of the table sympathizes. But ORM isn't really the solution. Probably just getting a good content provider and good data model is.
Any other comments? Okay.
Agreed.
We'll move on then. The media store has
Skip over the 80K one. Do we want to?
Did
All
I?
right.
What?
You skip
Oh, I'm
over
sorry.
it?
I did skip over one. They keep on moving around. What about the state of the Android Open Accessory Development Kit, 80K? Seems nothing has moved since it was introduced in 2011.
So I'll take that one. I personally love the 80K. I've been using it in a bunch of different projects. I actually run my lawn sprinklers off of it. So I don't think that it's a question of whether or not it's moved. We haven't changed the API or the 80K the board itself. However, there's been a whole bunch of other folks out there who've created versions of the 80K. The Arduino guys specifically have put out a 80K Mega that you can get directly from those guys, and they're sold by a bunch of resellers. There's the Yo-Yo board that's available still, which is spelled IOIO, and a bunch of other variants on it as well.
Actually, there's a new version of the Yo-Yo board that you can connect to with Bluetooth, so you don't even have to USB into it.
Right.
So hardware manufacturers have been making all sorts of stuff.
Right. So we've kind of, the way I see what we've done is we've kind of set the stage for people doing more accessories, and people have taken off and run with it and gone further than I think many of us thought we would get with it. So as far as what future plans are, that's a time machine question, so I can't answer that right now. But lots of stuff are going on.
Great, thank you very much. Now we can move on to Media Store. The Media Store has an insert image method for inserting images into the appropriate content provider. Why isn't there also an insert video method of a similar fashion? What's the recommended way to insert a video into the video content provider?
And I think we have two answers to this. One is the answer is no, that's not possible. Another answer is yes, there is possible. So dueling answers, go.
No. I did not say there was no way of doing it. There is no insert video.
Oh, okay, we're
Okay.
backpedaling.
I don't know why they didn't write an explicit insert video method. I do know I just punched a couple of phrases into Stack Overflow. It's my favorite way of looking stuff up when it comes to Android development now. I just typed insert video media store. The thing came up that basically the answer is not to call insert video, but to call insert and then as a parameter pass mediastore.video.something.content URI, and then a bunch of values. You can find it pretty easily, but the key is to use insert and state in the parameters that you want to insert a video, not to just that there's no explicit insert video.
Great.
Great.
Okay.
So we want to take a question from the Hangout?
Do we have any Hangout questions? Okay. Wait just one moment while we get some Hangout questions up in front of us.
Hi.
Oh,
Hey,
I'm
hey.
sorry. Go ahead.
So I'm working on an app and we're revamping our tablet version, but we're having some problems with the fragment life cycles. We want a callback when, basically like an on resume, but the fragment on resume method is tied to the activity method. And what we really need is something so that when we display a fragment on top of another one and then dismiss that fragment, that we get some kind of callback so that we can refresh that fragment. The only thing that I can really find is the on backstack changed listener, but it doesn't tell you anything about what happened. All it says is the backstack changed. So I was wondering if there's a better way of getting a callback of exactly what fragment became visible or was hidden or whatever.
So are all of the so the one that's getting covered up, it's attached the entire time and it's visible the entire time? There's just
It's
something
not
else
visible.
over it? Sorry?
It's not visible. There's another fragment completely covering it.
Okay. But I mean, I understand it's not visible to the user, but I mean, it has there's a is visible property. So it's still drawing.
Yeah, it's visible.
Okay. Do we have callback for on visible? Or anything like that?
No.
I'm not actually, let's see. I don't really know how I would approach it. I don't think there's a facility, now that I think about it, for doing this just within fragments. I think what you need to do is from within the activity have some business logic that's tracking what fragments are covering each other. And as they become visible, like as you remove the covering fragment, when that fragment detaches, have a callback up to the parent activity that says, okay, refresh whatever I was covering.
Okay, but that just seems like I have to implement that logic in every fragment I have, and I'm surprised there isn't built-in callbacks.
Let's see. Well, I mean, you wouldn't really have to implement a lot. All you would really have to implement is like on detach, tell the activity that I'm detaching. Then you'd have to implement the logic for tracking that stuff like within the parent activity.
Right. Or create a base class for your fragments that does that callback, that does that, hey, I'm going invisible now. So that way you don't have to code it once and then you extend all your other fragments from that. That way you don't have to re-include it every time.
Without actually looking at the code and having full scale documentation in front of me, I can't really pull off the top of my head what the appropriate callback would be, or if one exists. You're right in that it seems like it should, but I can't say for sure that it does. Plus, it is to a certain extent the parent activity's responsibility to manage the comings and goings of fragments, so it would sort of fall under that purview anyway.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Sure.
thank you very much for the question. Next question, moving on. Do we have anybody else in the Hangout that wants to ask? Okay. My producer is saying no, or at least he's shaking his head, which I assume that means he's saying no and not just trying to get an earwig out of his ear. So the next question from the moderator, Google TV development question, can we count on the 4 color buttons being on every Google TV remote? If so, is there any standardization of what the colors do? I've worked on Google TV, and as I believe those buttons are not standard, but the best thing that you can do is ask the Google TV people. They do a hangout every Wednesday just before hours. I think it's
from 1 to 2.
Until 2. And if you ask that question, they'll be able to tell you. As I remember, the only thing that needs to be standard on a Google TV remote is a number pad and a D-pad. But I would ask Google TV to be sure. Okay, moving forward. Is it possible to change the theming of the overflow menu, potentially adding a glow or drop shadow to it?
I don't remember for certain. I think it's possible to put custom views in the overflow menu. Producer shaking his head. I'm apparently making things up today. So
Cut that out.
So with that theory gone, I believe the answer then becomes no, because the only thing I could think of would be to style the individual views that you're putting in the overflow menu. So unfortunately,
unless you're completely opening, unless you want to re-implement your own overflow menu,
Right.
which is probably
unless you want to create your
which
own
you could
overflow
do,
menu.
but probably
Yeah.
might be a lot more work than you really want to get into
I'm
it.
curious though as to why. I mean, if somebody that asked this question is in the Hangout right now, I'd like to know why they want to do the custom theme for the overflow menu. It may be that there's a different way of achieving the functionality that you want to achieve. That's always my question when somebody writes in, can you do X, is what really are you trying to do, and is there a better way of doing it?
Fair enough.
Move on to the next question. Is there a sync service for application data down to a column value level, that is SQLite column value in a row, that manages the notification and transmission of changes between devices in an efficient manner?
All right. So the short answer, there's no built-in one that does things on the column level like that. If, like what Joe said with the previous question, if you are in the Hangout, I'd like to know what the specifics of what you're trying to accomplish, especially when you say an efficient manner. That can mean, efficient as in very quick. It can mean efficient for battery life, efficient for networking, etc. Just to go over a couple options. One, you can write your own sync adapter to handle the up and down stuff for you. We also have a backup API and an Android backup service that handles that we will host up to 1 meg of backup data. And the way that one works is that you upload data whenever you basically, whenever you want, you flag your data as dirty and should be backed up. And as the backup service sees fit, it will sort of send that up to the cloud. And then you can either manually trigger or a restore, or when you install the app on a new device or reinstall the app on the same device, it will trigger the data to come down from the cloud. We also have the option of, you could set up your own custom app engine server-side, and then, or not even necessarily app engine, but like whatever server-side implementation you want. You can send the data up as you see fit, and then use C2DM to send messages to your other devices when there's data that is ready to be synced. But without knowing your specific needs, I can't really say what the best solution for you would be. And currently, we don't have anything that will sort of, do magic database version control on a per column level without any real customizations on your part.
I would add that the question says transmission of changes between devices.
Oh, right.
If you're saying directly between devices, I certainly don't know of anything. The answer that Alex has given is a good one for syncing two devices or two or more devices with the cloud as an intermediary, which is actually, it might be what you're really trying to do. It certainly gives you the option of doing multiple devices. Between devices, I certainly can't think of anything offhand, and the first thing you would have to do is decide how they're going to communicate with each other. I think we should move on. Let's go to the next question, which says, when using an MHL HDMI with a Galaxy Nexus, can you force the output to display in portrait mode? Currently it locks to landscape. With my Droid Charge and other devices, the TV would mirror the device's display, including orientation.
Let's see. So we took a look at this one. So let me give you some background on this. It's not necessarily a development question. It's more about trying to display something that's on your device. Maybe you're asking this because you're trying to do a demo and stuff like, with your app and want to put it on a big screen TV. So the MHL HDMI device is basically a cable that plugs into your phone, and then it has a HDMI output, which then you can put into TV or some other big display. And what they're in this question is saying, okay, well, if I do that, it always puts it in landscape mode. So I guess we were joking before we came on air that, well, the way to fix that is to just change the orientation of your television, right? And then you're problem solved. But that's probably not what you're going for. I think what we're looking at is a limitation of that sort of output, and the HDMI that cable. So I think you're just looking at a hardware limitation there, and not something that we can solve for you at this point.
Yeah.
And we'd also like to welcome Trevor from wherever the heck he is.
Hi, Trevor.
Hey everyone. Yeah, I'm actually dialing in from London here. It's 10:30 p.m. over here, but I figured I'd hop on and see how you guys are doing, and just say hello and answer any questions if needed.
Cool.
Good.
Always glad for the backup. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Next question. When reading information from a USB MSC device using the USB manager, the bulk transfer function on an in endpoint fails to read data even with a proper CBW being sent on an out endpoint first. Can you go over the proper method for doing this?
Yeah, so I've messed around a little bit with USB Manager, but this is out beyond my ken. I don't know. Trevor, do you have an idea about this one?
Unfortunately not. I haven't done much with USB Manager myself either, so probably don't know any more about this than you do.
All right, so I think we're going to have to do a Stack Overflow punt on this one. So, Poster, if you can put a Stack Overflow question out for us about what you're doing and give us a little bit more details, we could try to tackle that one.
Great. Thank you. Do we have anybody? Doesn't look like we have anybody waiting in the Hangout right now for a question, so we'll move on. Will ADB on the device, not a development machine, have an option to now allow connection via USB and TCP/IP simultaneously in the future? It currently doesn't, as far as I know, meaning you can't wirelessly push .apks to phones connected to a how do you pronounce that? Yo-yo board, for example?
Yeah, the yo-yo board.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I believe this is, I'm pretty sure I did this actually a couple nights ago on when I was working with an ADK. The way to do this with ADB is first you have to connect your development machine to that device, and then on the connected development machine, type in, I think it's ADB space TCP/IP, and then you give it a port number like 5555, and then after that point you can disconnect the USB thing and connect it to whatever else you're plugging in, like your yo-yo board. And then on your development machine, type in ADB connect the IP address of your device plus that port number 5555, for example, and you should be able to do logcat and all the other kind of debugging functions that you normally do. So I believe that's in the developer documentation if you want to go check that out. It's under the developer tools bit about how to connect ADB through TCP/IP, but it is doable. I'm pretty sure I did that recently. So,
Okay.
If
Yes.
I'm not mistaken, I think that at least it used to be the case that required root because you have to do ADB set prop to go and set the port number. I'm not sure if that's changed since then, but I know at least as of, I want to say, the last time I tried this was back on Gingerbread and it did require root. So
oh yeah,
that is something you might want to watch out for. A lot of us do use engineering devices which do have at least limited root access enabled by default, so unless anybody's been running on a user build and can clarify one way or the other, I think root might actually be required for this.
Okay, yeah, Trevor, you're probably right. I believe, yeah, I may have been doing a development device at that point. So, sorry, you should be able to do it, but might not be able to do it without rooting your device.
Okay. Well, the information is at least useful. We'll see whether it helps out the person who asked the question. Next question is, I would like to access specific small pixel count arbitrary subrectangles of a phone's frame buffer.
Actually, you know what? I just realized something before you go on to the next question that might be worth noting. The question did mention that the user is using a yo-yo board, correct?
Yes.
Yep.
So the latest yo-yo firmware actually does have a really cool feature where you can plug in a Bluetooth dongle into the USB port rather than a USB cable. And then you can pair with the yo-yo over Bluetooth rather than over USB, which means that you can still remain connected to your computer over USB and use ADB that way, and then use Bluetooth to go and do the connection, to connect with the with the yo-yo board, and send commands that way for open accessory data.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah.
Thank you
sounds
for
like a
pointing
better
that
solution. Excellent.
To come back to the question that we were on, I'd like to access specific small pixel count arbitrary subrectangles of a phone's frame buffer as raw RGB pixel arrays at high frame rates, or even the uncorrected sensor data before RGB pixels have been computed. Is this possible, and is it in Java or in the NDK?
I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's probably not possible unless you've got direct access to the video, the drivers for the camera on the device. And so that's going to be a challenging implementation unless you've got if you're targeting a very specific device and you're trying to get data specifically from that device and nothing else. So I would venture to say probably not. I'm sure if you're very determined and are looking at a very, very specific use case, you might be able to do this, but I think you're looking at a no or some kind of other solution going through the API and clipping out the set of pixel arrays that you're trying to get to. But getting the uncorrected sensor data, I think you're going to have a really tough challenge there and might have to write some of your own driver code in order to do that, and that's, if you're up for that, great, more power to you. But if you're looking for a more generic solution, that's going to be tougher.
Okay. We have a typed-in question from the Hangout. Some apps try to use WebView instead of normal Android layout items, so it's easier to support different platforms. If I do that, and I have many views in my layout, will I gain or lose performance?
My gut says.
So I think the answer is going to be that you're going to lose performance there. HTML rendering is a lot more heavyweight than native Android views, and that's just a fact of the fact. You have this HTML document that has to be parsed and converted into a DOM, and overall that tends to be a very computationally expensive process compared to what the Android layout system provides natively.
Also, the hardware acceleration doesn't always play well with web views. In fact, sometimes the performance is better in a web view, like without hardware acceleration turned on. So depending on what the rest of the app does, you can definitely lose out on some performance by going the web view route.
Right. So overall, probably not going to gain you any. It's probably going to be faster to use native layouts instead of web views. So it depends on what you're trying to accomplish. But if performance is the goal, then I think you're looking at doing native layouts instead.
Okay, thank you very much. Next question is, I'm creating a bar graph. I want to move and scale existing items to make space for the new item. I animate in the new item from the baseline. Performance drops with greater than 50 items on the screen using view prop anim. What's the expected performance, and do you have any suggestions for me?
Oh yeah, the expected performance should be about 10, 12 milliseconds on that one. No, I really have, no idea actually what the performance is on that
I
one.
thought you were serious for a second. I was confused.
Really going for that.
Total straight face.
It's really,
Yeah,
sorry, I have no idea.
The performance depends entirely on what you're doing and how you're doing it.
And the device you're working on.
And the device you're
a bunch
working
of other
on.
things as well. So, really, this is a very fascinating question. Obviously, you're trying to solve a very specific problem here. Again, let's do the Stack Overflow punt, and please post that and give us a link to that so we can try to follow up on that one, because we're not going to be able to help you off the top of our heads here.
If there are any relevant code snippets that you can throw up there
Yes.
too,
Right.
not your entire application, but
Yes.
if there's a relevant for loop or paragraph or so of code that shows how you're doing what you're doing, we might be able to offer some tips on a more efficient way to do it. We can't, with the information provided, say off the top of our heads
Yeah.
how well that should, like what your frame rate should be or anything like that.
That's right. We see that you're working hard, but we need to take that one offline. So, next.
Yep. My activity plays a video and uses screen orientation equals landscape. If I hit the power button, the activity is restarted and video plays in the background. How can I prevent this? I tried config changes equals orientation L key board hidden, but no luck. Don't think that's...
Video. So, I'm trying to parse what the problem is here.
I think what he's saying is that
Background.
what the question is that if an activity plays a video and the power button is turned off, when the power button is turned back on again, the activity restarts and the video is playing in the background.
So this sounds like, okay, there's a little bit of a red herring. If the problem really is that the video is playing in the background, then I think what you need something in your activity to say on pause and stop your video playback. Actually, it's not about your screen orientation at this point. It's more about, does your activity have all its methods implemented correctly? So on pause and on
On resume.
On resume, yeah.
on destroy maybe, but probably on resume and on pause are the two methods you need to be looking at to make sure that video playback is stopped. And in fact, if you look at the documentation for doing some of the video recording and whatnot, we talk specifically about that you should implement on pause and on resume specifically to stop that kind of behavior, right? Because you do not want video playing in the background.
Right.
It's going to kill somebody's battery, and your users are going to be very unhappy with you.
I would add that in general, you've got to be aware of the activity life cycle, and the two most there's three. There are three. I'm not going to get into that. I know it too well. There are three callback methods that you definitely should look at anytime you code an activity: on create, on pause, and on resume. On pause will be called with anything leading to the activity stopping, including the power button. I'm almost certain that you won't be able to stop an activity, destroy it, turn off the power, anything like that before on pause being called. And similarly, whenever an activity is being started and it was started before, you'll go through on resume. There's where you have to make sure that you clean up everything that's going on. Because if you don't, your activity is still sitting there, and the minute that it gets a signal to start going again, it's going to be running. And anything that you didn't stop, clean up, prevent from jumping back in again will merrily go on its way.
Right. So, thanks for the question. Redirected. Next.
Yes. I find the Eclipse logcat view to be a bit inflexible to use. For example, I can't select copy portions of a log statement line. I'm curious how many of you prefer it over using ADB logcat from a terminal. So this is really a question to the Hangout. Although our experts could answer it as well if they want.
So it seems to me I can copy and paste portions of the log statement out of the Eclipse logcat. for if you're trying to do a lot of text processing, and you're familiar with command line utilities like grep and whatnot, then probably ADB Logcat is maybe a better solution for you. So again, I think it depends on what you're trying to accomplish. Again, I think it's possible. I know I've done this with bug reports and whatnot, clipping things out of the Eclipse log report. I don't know. You have any thoughts on this one?
I think it depends if you're in the DDMS view. I think you can only select full lines at a time.
Okay.
In which case, and there's no if you. It's almost a little bit misleading because if you right click on it, you don't see a neat little menu pop up that says copy or cut or whatever. So I mean, you do have to use the keyboard shortcuts, and it's Control-C, but you can still do it. I actually prefer the Eclipse view, like the embedded DDMS, over popping up an ADB Logcat in a terminal window, just because it's one less window taking up space on my monitor.
Yeah, I prefer to be working in Eclipse as much as possible, especially when I'm, trying to develop something, just because I can hop back and forth between what Logcat said and what's actually in the code. But then I'm using Eclipse as an IDE, so I'm developing in Eclipse. Obviously, if you're not doing that very much, or if you're doing something very complicated, you might want to do differently.
Yeah.
Okay. I should also plug a nice little utility that Jeff Sharkey on the Android team wrote, which is called ColorCat. And that's a Python filter for ADB Logcat that will give it a little bit of syntax coloring based on what type of log message is being displayed, which makes it a little bit more pleasant to use than just generic ADB Logcat.
Oh, that's good to know.
Awesome.
What's it called again?
ColorCat.
ColorCat.
Okay.
If you search through his blog, you can find a link to it. I think he might have renamed it to Color Logcat or something like that, but the original version was just called ColorCat.
Right.
And yeah, it's you just do ADB Logcat and then pipe it into utility, and it adds a bit of color to it and maybe formats it so it's a little easier to read. But you can still go and copy and paste out of it just as it was standard Logcat. So.
Super.
Of course, with a little bit of tweaking there too for the change that makes to this.
And
if you pair that with another app called Air Display, you can actually go and take a Zoom or some other Android tablet, set that up as a secondary monitor, and just show your logs on that second display.
Cool.
Cool.
And if you can't find the blog that Trevor was talking about, you can always use your favorite search engine to find them. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Actually, we have a Hangout question, so go ahead.
Yeah, what I want to ask is, on GSM devices, you've got this option to connect to a network based on automatic connection, or to see all the networks available and then select one, the one that you prefer.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a way to get this kind of information using code and getting the information of which networks you can connect to and information about those networks?
Which carrier networks?
Yeah. The reason I'm asking is because today here we had a new carrier started working here, and they have two networks, one that is very high speed, like about 8 megabits, and the other one is like 0.05. So I'm trying, and the phone doesn't know which way to go. So I'm trying to see if there's a way by code to block it from going to one and instead of to go to the other.
I
Seems like it might be possible, but I'm not. I can't think of off the top of my head how you determine which network and then pick one on the fly.
Right.
I think it's a system level decision about what network it's actually going to be sitting on.
Since it's a carrier data network and not a Wi-Fi network,
Yeah.
like my guess is that it's not possible, but I can't say for
Having
sure.
two, it sounds like. So, do you think you can have two carrier networks on a single phone? Is that possible?
No, it's not two carriers. It's the same. It's the same carrier, but since it doesn't have a national coverage, another network helps it and gives it another coverage, and they both got the same name, so the phone doesn't know to which network to go because it sees it as the same name.
I see. So so you're trying to give it a preference because the phone itself can't seem to figure out which network it should be on.
Yeah, which one is the fast one and which one is really slow.
I don't know. Trevor, Are you out there?
Sorry, what was the question one more time?
The question is, he's getting the developer's getting a situation where a single carrier is providing two data networks. One of them has a much faster speed than the other. I think that's what he's saying. So the question is there a way to programmatically choose which one is going to be used by the phone?
Okay, so basically an API to change APN settings then.
Yes.
Not APN which the carrier to select, because APN is the same defined to the network. You need to choose which network to go to.
Oh, so it actually shows up as an entirely different wireless cellular network. That's interesting. Yeah, I actually don't think that, to my knowledge, that there's an API available to do that, at least as far as our public APIs are concerned. So, I mean, of course, it's always possible there's one I don't know about, but to my knowledge, I don't think there's a way to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sure.
Sorry about that. We have another question typed in from the Hangout that says, what is the preferred way to share data between activities? That's a good one.
Interesting. To a certain extent, depends on the type of data. If it's data that you sort of want all activities to be aware of at all times, I would say shared preferences. They're called shared preferences for a reason. Like you set them up. It's a series of key value pairs that any of the activities in your application can access. If it's more along the lines of data you want to send as parameters, then it would be intent extras. So within it, you can attach pieces of data to an intent before you fire it. You can add, strings or integers or just arbitrary objects or whatever you want. And it's the same basic thing where it's a key value pair.
Yeah. I would say that the answer, as many times it is it depends. For instance, I'm assuming that these two between the activities are in the same application, because if they're not, then there's clearly only a very limited number of ways that you can do it. If they are within the same application, then shared preferences is a really good way. Intents is another good way. Writing to shared storage and using the common file name is another way. It just depends on how much data there is and what type of data it is. I mean, if for instance it was things like tabular data or images or something like that, I would be tempted to write my own internal content provider just because I'm real familiar with writing them, which would make it really easy to keep the data synchronized, because there's a lot of things that you can do with transactions and stuff like that, so that you can ensure that the data is always going to be the latest data regardless of which activity is looking at it. So I think we've summarized shared preferences, intents, content providers, etc.
Yeah. Nailed it. Next.
Right. Is it possible to disable another application that intercepts all SMS messages? I have an application that uses SMS, but other applications like GoSMS blocks other applications that handle the SMS message.
So he wants to be able to stop GoSMS from stopping his app from sending messages.
Right.
It's sort of one of those radar versus radar jammer questions where things just keep incrementally one-upping each other.
Right.
I'm trying to remember how SMS works. So there's two basic systems on Android for these kind of broadcasts. There's the one where it goes to one application at a time, and each application has the option of saying, I'm the only one who gets this.
Right.
Or sending it sort of back into the wild.
Application for SMS, right?
Right. Or
I think the user has to pick that.
Broadcast intent that's sent via SMS receiver or to SMS receiver. SMS _ received. SMS receiver is the name of the app. So the catch here is there's a Android priority attribute that is set on the broadcast receiver. So in this case, what you want to do is set a higher priority. So this is actually a comment on the post by Simon M. And he's absolutely right that you do need to set a higher priority for for your broadcast receiver to preempt the other one. That being said, you sort of get into an arms race there. So if you set a higher priority, the other person could set one higher than yours. So at some point, you just have to uninstall the other app.
Right. So they said priority 1 million, and you said priority 1,000,001, and then you get the app, and then they move it to 1,000,002.
Well,
And
part of it is the sort of corollary to that is that if you send the message out for other applications to process after you do, then they don't have to try to one-up you anymore because they still get the data. I'd be curious if GoSMS has an opt-in feature for that or not. I would also recommend at least putting an error message of some sort up that says, please adjust the settings in other SMS apps so that this one can actually see messages. It's currently being blocked by blah, blah, blah. But the priority thing will fix it in a short-term way, but it does become an arms race, so you might want to have some backup solution in place as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Next question. I'm using batch operations to access several content providers in a high frequency. I'm getting a warning reached max size for compiled SQL statement cache for database, and then the insert process quits. How do I avoid that in Gingerbread?
Several different content providers in high frequency.
Yeah. I think the question is asking, I'm accessing several different content providers. I'm trying to do a bunch of different inserts in rapid succession and getting this error message.
So he's spinning up inserts faster than inserts can actually happen in the database.
I don't know. My problem is that I'm not really sure what that error message means. Compiled SQL statement cache seems interesting. I'm not sure under what circumstances it's issued. You know that in batch operations you can first of all I can't remember what the term is. You can set batch operations for a content provider to yield. And that might be a way of preventing this because you're not trying to overload your system and throwing all of these transactions in. You cannot expect that you can put thousands of transactions into the system and have them all go one right after the other without yielding to other systems or overloading the system. Yield points would be a good way of dealing with this, and also there's something else in apply batch that will make sure that you can define transactions and make sure that if something goes wrong that they get backed out and retried. But other than that, I'm not really sure if there's a good way of avoiding this other than figuring out your own mechanism for not overloading the system's ability to update content providers. That whole process is relatively slow in comparison to other things. So you need to be aware of that and, as you say, use batch operations and use yield points and only send a certain number of transactions over, in a period of time to make sure that you're not overloading the system. Trevor, do you have any ideas of what would be a good way of sort of doing self-throttling for batch transactions?
It sounds like basically, the only thing advice I can have is try and simplify your the logic that's interacting with SQLite there. I'm not aware of any way to go and, for example, modify the size of the compiled SQL cache. So I think it's just a matter of trying to make sure that I'm not sure. I'd love to see what he's actually running here, but I think it's a case of either simplifying the SQL he's using or using some other entry point in SQLite. But aside from that, I've actually never run into this personally. So
right. I would also have to say that it would be very useful to see the actual code that the person submitting the question is using to see if there's obvious ways of increasing efficiency. Certainly, you want to be using things like insert rather than compiling your own SQL statements. Raw SQL statements are not the way to insert things into a content provider. If at all, if you can get away with using the insert method, that's what you should be using, because there's a variety of reasons for that. So, let's move on. When I have to use the NDK to grab camera sensor pixels before the JPEG compression has removed information, a raw RGB buffer would be ideal along with exposure metadata. I read that this sort of access is available, but it varies by the phone and camera.
Yeah, some reminiscent of the previous question about trying to pull raw data off of the camera sensor. Not being familiar with the NDK as much as I would like to be, I think the answer is probably not. If you're like writing low-level drivers and you've got a very specific use case and you're targeting a very specific device, maybe that's possible. But if you're looking for a generic solution, I think it's going to be very challenging. Not completely undoable, but maybe not what you want there. So I'd look at other ways to implement what you're doing. And I think we've got time for one more question.
And we'll go to it. Is it always necessary to init loader from onCreate in a fragment? What if critical arguments for the loader are dependent on the results of another loader? Is it always necessary to init loader in onCreate for a fragment? Does
I
anybody
don't know
know
off the top of my head.
I think so.
I don't think it is.
I don't believe so.
I would be surprised. I mean, I've definitely done init load. I usually do init loaders in onCreate just because I know that I'm going to be using them, but I don't think it's a requirement. But we'd have to look into that. Certainly, once again, it would be nice to know what you're trying to do so that we could, give you a better answer of how to best do it.
Yeah,
So we can follow up with a Stack Overflow question as
delaying
well.
loaders. So it looks like the question is about delaying loaders, and
Yeah.
I think the answer is yes, you can. Probably it's maybe, depending on how much data you're trying to load into your fragment, it might be a good idea actually to do that.
Yeah, there's actually nothing in the docs that says that this has to be done inside of onCreate
Right.
or on Activity Created. Our samples do it that way because that's usually a good place to put it.
Yep.
But I'm not aware of any restrictions that actually require it to do that.
I don't think there are any. In fact, I think I've written, I may have written something that does an init loader later on just because it loads one thing and when it gets the results, it sets up another loader. We'll have to follow up with the Stack Overflow question. Sorry, we can't be of more help.
Okay.
And I think that has done it for today. Thank you very much for all of your questions. They were all really good, and we will see you next week.